All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to No Easy Buckets. Joined once again. It's been a little bit of a hiatus. NBA, the bubble's been gone for a couple months. Me and Blake have been starved for some NBA content, and we thought it was appropriate to bring you another episode, and hopefully keep doing that over the next couple of weeks as the NBA ramps back up. But shit has been hitting the fan today. It has been I want to welcome you in, Blake. I want to see how you're doing. I know we're all like locked up in the houses. Everybody's scared to walk outside. It's been
terror in the streets.
Terror in the streets. I've boarded up my windows. I hope you have as well.
I just put bars on my windows as well. So yeah. Everybody stay indoors. Not just because COVID. There's extenuating circumstances.
Lots of stuff. Yeah, stuff we're not going to get into, but you should do your own research to keep yourself informed.
Stay informed.
I can't even do that without feeling bad. So yeah, back to the important stuff. NBA. So we wanted to jump on. It's been football's been going crazy lately. It's been COVID this, COVID that. It's been cancellations. The NBA had what we've seen is the best, I guess, situation of any major sport with the bubble. It was probably the most elaborate, unique situation. But they didn't have any positive tests. They didn't have any problems. Nothing's happened since then. I mean, I'm sure there's been some players that have tested positive, but none of that info is coming out because it's not in season. It's not really that important to, like, I guess, from a breaking news aspect in the NBA. But we've the state of things right now, before we get into the free agency madness that started in the last couple of days, we're going to get into the state of things right now with the NBA, which is that we have the draft starting in 2 days. We're recording this on November 16th on a Monday. The draft is finally November 18th on a Tuesday. These prospects have been, draft eligible since March of literally the entire COVID time has been them waiting to get drafted. So we've got that coming up on the 18th. Today marked the start of kind of the transaction window where people could start agreeing on potential trades, or I guess what would you call them, like to be processed trades. They're not officially approved yet.
Yeah.
And then free agency is going to start the 20th, which is free agency will start the 20th at 6 p.m., which is going to be this Friday, and then on Sunday at midnight you can actually start to sign the dotted line. So I don't know why there's like a 2-day difference there. I don't know if that's the normal way to do that, the moratorium, but
I don't get it either. If like the transaction window begins to where you can like tentatively plan for things, I don't understand why you wouldn't be able to go ahead and sign players, but that's neither here nor there. There's a week to go along, but yeah, I'm just excited for everything to start back. I do know, I will say this. It's crazy to me that it seems like basketball has been forever ago, but it hasn't. Like it's legit been what, 80 days? Not even 80 days. Like,
is it October? Yeah, it was was it or the end of September?
It was. Yeah, I think it was the more or less the end of September. It's. I think the 80 days is what I'm like. The two teams in the finals, so the Heat and the Lakers. The 80 days that'll be like the length of their off season. So put that in perspective.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And before we get too much farther, I did want to, there was a new factor to the pod today. And I've already blown right past that. Also forgot to start the timer that I was pulling up before I hit record.
Right before.
So the timer started, but also too, we're doing a video version of this. Hopefully you're watching it. It's going to be on YouTube. The 5 people that listen, hopefully you watch as well. And, so what we're going to do is as I'm doing this right now, as you can see in a moment, I'm going to share my screen and kind of, this is the thing. I don't want to, I want to give homage to NBA Desktop, which is, and I'm going to resize this for the recording. I want to give homage to NBA Desktop, which is kind of like I don't know if anybody watches it on The Ringer, but it's a great show idea. They won like a Web Emmy or whatever they're called. Kind of going through like a Google Doc of different like recent NBA stories. And they actually ended a couple of weeks ago because network Jason Concepcion is leaving The Ringer to go to Crooked Media. So those are no more, but this is definitely not a ripoff. This is just kind of an idea to go through like topics and everything as you see and kind of keep in line, but also give you kind of a visual of like what we're talking about, what we're thinking. And we'll hopefully have some fun with it down the line, but we'll also give a quick ad for Dropbox. Dropbox Paper. This is what we're using. An awesome tool. For no reason whatsoever. I think Dropbox is a really amazing product. So we'll go with that. But anyway, yeah. So you see here that I'll show too that the salary cap's not changing at all, which a lot of people. I think everybody kind of agreed that it wasn't going to change much. They thought that it was going to stay the same this year for the sake of just keeping things level, and then it would change, it would go down next year. But it seems like they've already, and I don't have that tweet here, but they've already kind of released like the tentative salary cap for the next like 3 years, I think, and that's just going up like $2 or $3 million each year, which I think that's welcomed instead of going down and seeing like teams have to really maneuver the cap in a difficult way and kind of make things make some tough decisions. So hopefully we're retaining some flexibility and no big spikes, but that's kind of for the nerd Twitter.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day too, seeing that go up, I think is a good thing for the league, even though it's tentative at this point, just to kind of get it out there. I know that they didn't even have to kind of put it out there that the salary cap, and I think it was on average over the next 3 years, the cap was going up, including the tax level. They were both kind of in parallel, going up about 2 million each year. I think the tax level capping out at about 138 maybe, and then like like the actual salary cap like capping out at around 115. So I think all in all, over the next 3 years, we should see that start to go up. And I guess you can call that inflation, but whatever. It's going up, which is a positive.
Right. And there is there was some specific, we're definitely not going to get into those like minutia of the cap and the luxury tax, because I love that stuff, but that is not fun for a podcast unless you're really speaking to just other NBA nerds. But basically this year is going to be an exception where teams that generally pay the luxury tax, which is teams that you're familiar with, like the Warriors, the Bucks, the Clippers, the Lakers, they're not technically there yet, but they would be. And then a team like Oklahoma City, that before they made the recent trades, they had a lot of large contracts. They were paying the luxury tax. This year, it's going to be a little bit cheaper for them because of based on the league revenue. So without getting into much of it, that's basically what it is. So there's a slight advantage for teams like the Warriors and like, teams that could potentially get into the tax to not pay as much of a bill. So there's going to be, you may see a team like the Bucks or the Warriors make a slight move that they wouldn't have made otherwise. Maybe that's adding another contract or making an additional trade, just and having a little bit more, spilling over a little bit more to that luxury tax, just because there's not as much of a penalty this year. So there's small things like that, but I don't think it's going to really change much more than like a small minimum role player type contract. But hey, I'm willing to be surprised.
At the end of the day.
Exactly. So as you see here too, is that we kind of have a tentative schedule for things, and go over that briefly. It looks like everything's starting back up on the 22nd.
I will say this before you get into the schedule. I think teams are officially reporting on the 1st of December, and I don't think Woj put that here.
No, that's a good point too, and he probably did in another tweet. It's been so much lately, but yeah, I mean, they're going to be reporting pretty soon, and then right after Thanksgiving, and then we've got December 22nd opening night. I think they're even going to try to do some preseason games, which I don't know what the point of that is, other than maybe just as a trial run for some COVID protocols. But then we're going to have the All-Star break. It's not too much off what it normally is, kind of in like early March, late February or middle February. But this is minus an All-Star game, which I haven't even looked into. I guess they're not going to have an All-Star game this year. They're just going to have a 5-day break, which makes sense.
I think logistically it would be super hard to kind of get all of that worked out.
Yeah, it would. But I would not. The NBA has been very fluid. I would not cross off the chance that they change that and they actually have an All-Star game if things aren't crazy by that point, or things have worked out so far up to March.
I do agree that the vaccines that have kind of been touted over the last couple of days, they do play a huge factor, especially when you get like talking about like March, April, May type time frame. I think logistically, not only logistically would it be hard, and when I say logistically, taking a bunch of people from different markets and like putting them all together, I think it would be too much of a risk to like bring so many different people to one location. So I think that's just, I guess just like without knowing a lot of context, that would be my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's better to go ahead and plan for it not to happen than like spend a lot of effort trying to make it happen when it's not really that necessary. It's the All-Star Weekend is more about, it's like Summer League. It's all about the coming together, the connections, the meetings, everything other than the games, honestly. Yeah. So, and that's really what the All-Star break's about anyway, is everything. It's the fanfare. So if you're not going to have the fanfare, why have the All-Star game? It's just some players don't even like it. This year, I'm sure they're not thrilled to do it. They spend enough time together in the bubble in the hotels in Orlando. But yeah, there's nothing really else notable besides the fact that there's going to do and there's not been a ton of info out about the play-in tournament, but I was listening to Keith Parrish, actually, who does the Fast Break Breakfast podcast and on Twitter, and also does a Grits and Grind podcast for Grizzlies stuff. He was talking about the play-in tournament earlier today. So that's the only other thing I think that's notable, is that for this year only so far, they're continuing the play-in tournament, which is what happened in the bubble. It was a little bit different. In the bubble, it was the 8 and 9 seed, and they played for basically the Grizzlies had to win 2 games to make the playoffs over the Trailblazers. Ended up just being a 1-game deal. But it was an interesting little wrinkle. They've decided to move it to the 7, 8, 9, and 10 seeds this year. And the way he explained it is that, so the 7 and 8 seed are going to play each other, and the 9 and 10 seed are going to play each other. Hold on just a moment. It's going to make sense. So the winner of the 7 and 8 seed game is going to be the 7 seed. Then the loser of the 7 and 8 game is going to play the winner of the 9 and 10.
For the 8 seed.
So there is a scenario where the 10th seed makes the playoffs as the 8th seed. And there's a scenario where the 7th seed misses the playoffs. So
I actually like that.
I think it's really interesting if everything's tight. But like last year, the Dallas Mavericks were 7th seed. And they were well ahead of everybody. And then you have in the East where 7 and 8 was pretty tight with the Magic and the Nets, but 9 and 10 were just like, I mean, the Wizards they gave the Wizards an opportunity to come to the bubble just to be nice. They weren't going to make it and barely don't even play. And then the Hornets had like 23 wins. You shouldn't have a scenario where a team with 23 wins makes the playoffs. So I think there's potential for it to be really exciting and really, really fun, but there's also potential for a lot of people to get upset.
But I think that's why it works. Because
exactly.
Think about it like this. If you're the Dallas Mavericks and you're a fan of the Mavericks, your team's up 7 games on the 8th seed, right? You're cruising. Like, you're not even really paying attention the last, 10 games maybe? At the end of the day, like, this puts you in the like, take the Grizzlies and the Mavericks, for instance, if we're going to talk about last year. It still puts you in the arena of, hey, like, at the end of the day, I need to get 6th place. I need to, like, every game, I can't take any games off, right? We're up 7 games. I'm not in jeopardy of making the 8th seed or even potentially losing that 8th spot. But at the end of the day, I still would have to play for the 7th seed, which kind of sucks at the same time.
Right. I think the people that are going to be the most upset would be the person in the 7th seed if they have 100%. A substantial lead. But, and this is the thing, we base our, our thoughts on what we've already been used to. And it's been 1 through 8. And then we saw the play in. Nobody really got upset about it. You could have, if you were a Grizzlies fan, you legitimately could have been like, oh no, we deserve to make it. Us being 2 Grizzlies fans, I wasn't like upset about it. Like I thought it was worth it. Like the Trailblazers deserved a shot. The Phoenix Suns deserved a shot, and they went undefeated. And I think what the goal of this and kind of to make everybody uncomfortable is that's the goal, is to make teams uncomfortable, to not be able to rest back for the last 2 weeks of the season.
Yes.
And we already saw that with the bubble and the teams in the West. Everybody came in ready to play like they could win. The Suns literally won every game,
every single game,
and still didn't make it. They didn't even make the play-in game.
Yeah.
So there was a scenario where like you did everything possible and you didn't make it. but you saw that all those teams really worked towards that. And if you bring it all the way down to the 10 seed, you're going to have these teams that normally would kind of give up a month or so left in the season and tank.
Dude, yes,
they're not going to do that. Their ownership is not going to let them do that.
That's so true.
So that's the reason you're doing it. You're going to have teams in the West and the East now that are going to – they're going to play – you're going to get more quality basketball and you're going to get a solid effort, because making the playoffs can change things for a team like Atlanta. They've been given the task of like making the playoffs this year, basically. Like you have to make it. Like the ownership is like,
Trey, you're three. Have to.
It's way more likely this year. And also too, it like makes it to where, you know, a team, maybe we do see a 10 seed make it into the playoffs this year. And that's kind of crazy. Maybe it's a team like the Kings that haven't made it in a long time. And, you know, that's great for their franchise. Or maybe it's a team like the Grizzlies who kind of were a little bit over their skis this year, a little bit overachieving this year, ended up missing the playoffs, got some good experience. This year, I would have actually picked them to miss until we get into kind of like season previews and see where everybody's been trading. But this also gives them an opportunity to make this play-in tournament per se, and then have a chance to be an 8 seed. So I think there's a lot of scenarios where
so many downstream impacts.
I think it's going to be fun. I mean, you're obviously, if you're the 7 seed and you have a 5-game lead on the 8 seed and you end up missing because you went on a 2-game losing streak, people are going to be upset about that. But for right now, it's one season. Let's hope it works out and be positive.
Yeah.
So,
but, I mean, and just a final piece on that. Like, think about it like this. It's all for positioning too. Like, let's say you're a 100 team getting the 8th spot. You play the 7th seed, and not only do you miss not having to play the number 1 overall seed, you get that 7th seed and you get a better matchup, a more favorable matchup, depending on how you look at it. But at the end of the day too, there's so many bonuses that are tied potentially to making the playoffs, or getting a little bit farther here, or tied to like points, like a total number of points. There's so many implications for teams, like as you mentioned, that wouldn't necessarily have made the playoffs. You mentioned the Hawks. Like, this is a scenario where potentially they would have a little bit more of a shot to get it in a playoff game.
Yeah, I think it's going to make I think we're going to see less tanking. We're going to see less horrible basketball, which I think is what has been the NBA's problem, is when you have the Bucks or the Warriors of the past few years that they come into Detroit on a Tuesday night and they beat Detroit by 45, and there wasn't even a chance of the Detroit winning. And it's like in a pro like the NFL, like anybody can win any week, you know. And in sports like that, in baseball, anybody can win any week. In basketball, that's true for in some respect when you have scrappy teams, but you just don't want this just mid-season, you know, kind of 3/4 of the way through, and people start packing their bags and going home and resting players and benching dudes. Like, it's just not fun for people, and especially for fans. Like, I just don't think there's not as much of a downside as people may think, as people may perceive. Like, we'll see what happens, but I think that was something to note, because that's going to be an interesting, you know, we have a 72-game season, so it's a little bit shorter. Who knows about what's going to happen with fans and home court and everything, but maybe this all happens in another bubble scenario. Maybe they do the playoffs in the bubble again, which would be interesting and fun. I mean, the bubble was
that would be
interesting from a viewer's perspective.
That would be interesting if they did that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. I mean, we saw the NCAA announced today that the March Madness is basically going to take place in one location, 68 teams.
Indianapolis, let's go. 2 hours from me.
I was about to say. Go. I know. If in a normal year, going to Vegas to watch all this would be awesome. Maybe even do it in Vegas, but we'll leave all those trips for another day.
Also, that NCAA all 68 teams being in one location would be a logistical nightmare.
Logistical nightmare, and it's a bunch of 20-year-olds too. Like, it's different than the pros.
I get it. It'd be good for Indianapolis though. Like, that'd be insane.
It'd be insane. I think I would. My vision is they end up doing it in 2 different sites at least, because
have to.
I just don't think you could do it all at one. You'd end up games go long, go overtime, stuff like that. But that's neither here nor there. Wanted to get into the draft really quickly. We're not draft aficionados, really. We do watch it and pay attention to it. I watch the draft every year like none other. Like, I look forward to it. I've dove in years past, done mock drafts. Like, hopefully in the future can get back into that. But the draft is not very strong this year. As we transition to that, talking about that a little bit. the draft it's been a weaker year or a weaker class from what everybody's projected, and we've had way more time, twice as long, to evaluate it. So it's been people are probably tired of hearing about it. We're not going to go through prospects, but it does seem the biggest, I guess, point to note is that the Warriors, who kind of had a rebuilding year in the middle of a dynasty, have the number 2 pick. They have Steph, Clay, and Draymond coming back from injury to be healthy this year. They have Andrew Wiggins that they got in a trade with shipped out D'Angelo Russell. So they've got pieces. They've got a number 2 pick is in any year is a great asset, even in a weaker class. Like, there's a lot of options there, but that's kind of been the main. That's why no one really knows what's happening yet, is because no one knows if there's going to be a bunch of trades. And we've been talking about it with the James Wiseman rumors and everything, but I think a lot of the draft hinges on if, Golden State is who they're going to take and if they're going to trade out.
I think at the end of the day too, what's known, I think, at this point about the draft, as you mentioned, definitely not a draft aficionado, but at the end of the day, what I want to say is I think the only lock at this point is that Minnesota pick at number 1. Yeah. I think that's the only thing that's pretty much, I wouldn't say it's a given, but at the end of the day, like, that's where it is. And I'm glad that you pulled up the mock draft at this point, because I want to talk about the Warriors scenario, right? I think you and I have differing opinions on this, because when you take the number 2 pick, for me, and just me doing a deep dive on James Wiseman and like seeing his comparables and seeing like his shooting, what he could potentially be at a ceiling, I think that if I'm Golden State, I would feel bad trying to pass up on James Wiseman, unless I just get a incredible trade offer.
Yeah.
I don't think you can pass up on James Wiseman at number 2.
Yeah, I mean, we did have our own kind of private discussion about this the other day. I'm not as big of a Wiseman fan. I know he's kind of that prototypical, like, huge big man that's athletic that people gravitate towards, especially when you have like a Zion last year. They're different players, but still people get fired up about the same things. I'm a big LaMelo fan. I love LaMelo now. LaMelo now seems like he's going to be the number 1 pick. I think that it's more sure now than it has been. But I still don't think that it's it might not be written in stone. It's not a lock. That would still be my pick if I was any team in the top 3 because of the 100%. Ceiling. And honestly, as for the Warriors, I still would do it, even though a lot of people were like, "Why bring that person? Bring a guy like LaMelo in with the Warriors? You're so close to their championship. Bring in somebody like a Wiseman that addresses a need." But from my thinking is that you use this pick as a bridge to your next dynasty. People could use that argument for James Wiseman as well. I think that people that can run your offense, initiate your offense, and people that can be difference makers on the wing are still more valuable than big men right now. Unless you have kind of those, unicorn big men like a Jokic or something like that, where or like an Anthony Davis, but still those don't grow on trees. And at the same time, early in their career, you could say that those players didn't have the effect that, a wing of their similar value would have had. So my thought is that you take a LaMelo Ball or even an Anthony Edwards there as a wing player the argument that I made to you was I want to draft a player at number 2. If I'm drafting, if I'm not trading down substantially down to take in the draft, I want to take a player that can theoretically be on the court in the playoffs. And when I think about James Wiseman, I don't think he's going to be on the court in the playoffs for the Warriors because of foul trouble, because of offensive fit, because of what they like to do with Draymond at the 5. So that's my thinking behind taking the wing. And I also think that when it comes to championship contenders and big men, I think there's just service level guys, role player level guys that can be found for the minimum out there, especially since the big man has been more devalued. Even like a Marc Gasol could be a player that maybe he's not getting an offer for anywhere, 8 to 10 million, like maybe he's looking for, whatever. I don't even know what the number is for Marc Gasol, but let's say he wants to go win another title before he leaves and decides to go join a team like the Warriors and be like, look, I'm here for 15 minutes a game. I'm gonna give you a hell of a 15 minutes a game. Well, why do you need James Wiseman if Marc Gasol is going to be playing the fourth quarter until you go to a small lineup? Like, that's my thinking behind it. But at the same time, somebody's going to take Wiseman, most likely in the top 3. And, at this point in the draft, lean on your scouts and go with it.
Yeah. I think in my biggest argument, and we can talk about James Wiseman and the number 2 pick forever, but I think my biggest argument would be that you still have a lot of life left in the Golden State team, especially if you keep what's his name, Andrew Wiggins, in your lineup on your team, because I think he's still a decent fit there, right, at that wing.
Yeah.
With Clay and Steph. But at the end of the day, too, Steph has a lot of playing time left. Clay, a lot of playing time left. If I'm Draymond Green, like if I'm a coach and I'm thinking about Draymond Green in like the next 3 to 5 years, like I don't see it, because at the end of the day, he can be elite defensively, but he's undersized at his position in terms of like height, length, etc. And I think at that point, you're going to want somebody that can fill that void there, and potentially that's Wiseman at that point. So I think that would be my biggest argument. But as you mentioned, big men, the big position has been devalued a little bit, and they're a dime a dozen. You kind of saw that with the Lakers getting JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard on their champion team, right? So at the end of the day, like anything is possible.
I mean, and the Warriors had JaVale McGee in the past.
That's right.
Dwight Howard's probably going to be available. Also, too, with James Wiseman, too, and I think this hasn't gotten talked about enough, or it has. It's just been so much has been retreaded over the last few months. We saw him play 3 college games, and he played in high school, which everybody's the words of a lot of high school. Everybody murders in high school. Everybody cooks in high school,
especially if you're 7'1" with a 7'6" wingspan.
If you're 7'1", and there was criticisms of him coming in. I think he had a worse draft grade before the season than even he does now. Like, he's kind of gone back up into that consensus top 2 or 3. And before COVID, really, when the college basketball season was in its heat, he had dropped out of the top kind of 3 to 5. He was being mocked at 7 to 10, somewhere like that. Kind of like, okay, at this point, it makes sense to take this guy. But so I think you're taking a huge risk there, even though you're risk with a lot of these players. I just think I've just been a LaMelo guy, ever since he was like 15. I think it's crazy. I think he's going to be a good player. I think Lonzo's a good player. I think LaMelo's going to be a good player. I think the personality stuff and the dad stuff is overblown. It's not been a factor ever since Lonzo left LA. Even the last year there, it wasn't a problem. LaMelo has already distanced himself from his dad as far as a involvement standpoint. He's signed with I can't remember what agency he signed with, but he's got other representatives. They don't do the whole big baller brand stuff anymore. I think it's overblown. And I think, if LaMelo happens to fall out of the top 2 or 3 picks, I think whatever team gets him you're going to really be like, why the hell did we drop? Yeah. Not the same situation as a Luka, not the same player, obviously, not comparing to Luka.
Definitely
but a situation where people had these kind of made up stereotypical doubts from a player coming from Europe or the situation. And so he dropped and technically went 5, but went 3. And I think you're going to have a similar reaction of, oh shit, we passed on LaMelo Ball when he comes out and he has a good first couple months or whatever. I mean, that's what I hope. I hope they're all good. I hope everybody has a good player. I hope there's just more good basketball. But I think that's really the only notes from the draft. I think it's gonna be a fun draft. I'm gonna have it on every screen that I have available on Wednesday.
It's gonna be an interesting draft, mainly just because it's been so long since these guys have played basketball, and you don't really know what's gonna happen. I don't know what's gonna happen.
I think there's a good chance we see more trades because people have had longer to evaluate players, even teams that made the playoffs.
At least the film.
They had usually when you have teams in the playoffs, like, you have the playoffs in June, then you have a race to the draft, then a race to the or May and June, you have a race to the draft, a race to summer league and everything. Now you've got these teams that all COVID before the bubble restart, they were evaluating these draft picks. So they're going to be more, these playoff teams like the Lakers and the Celtics and the Raptors, they're going to have more time, even more from higher ups in the organization that have those. They have the ability to be like, no, we're taking this player or we're doing this thing, instead of a scout that's just like an opinion in the room. You're going to have a lot more informed people in the room, to where there's going to be a lot of deals made. At least I hope it's fun when that happens. I hope the Grizzlies trade up. I hope, we have a decent pick, I think at 40. I hope there's some good players in that late first, early second round, even all the way through the second round. So
it's possible.
I'm excited to see what some teams do. There's some interesting players in there, and everything. But it's going to be a fun draft. But I think that's really, unless there's anything else that you could think of, draft related, I don't think that there's much else to talk about.
I'm all good on the draft. Yeah, like you said, I just watch it. I'll put it on every.
Exactly.
I'm not gonna dive. I'm not gonna.
I got the Woj
lottery.
I got the Woj notifications turned on. I got the Shams notifications turned on. I'm good to go. That's all I need. So let's finish up here talking through trades, because I know there's some stuff we want to talk to. That basically, the trade started happening today. We had rumors a couple of days ago that the Suns were interested in Chris Paul, that the OKC had basically given permission for Chris Paul to talk to other teams, and really it had all been focused around the Suns. A slight bit of history, just because it kind of makes sense in the context of what was happening in the trade. Obviously, Chris Paul was traded last year from Houston to OKC for Russell Westbrook to reunite Westbrook and James Harden. Even though both were on what were considered to be bad contracts, with $40+ million dedicated to them in the next couple of years, the Rockets gave not only Chris Paul but numerous first-round picks and pick swaps to OKC, who also traded Paul George to the Clippers and got picks and players from that trade. Chris Paul then turned the Thunder into a playoff team that faced Houston in the first round and took them to 7 games. So it's kind of a crazy turn of events there. Now they've basically, I want to say, used and abused. They didn't do that. It was all mutual. Chris Paul wanted to play. I think they even were willing to tank last year. Chris Paul was like, no, let's play. They had a good year. They still got the picks they wanted. Now Chris Paul is being dealt to Phoenix, a team that needs to make the playoffs, another one of those teams that benefits from this play-in format, and really upgrades them to a major someone that you have to take seriously in the West. And the trade was, as you see on the screen, Chris Paul to Phoenix. Actually ended up being Chris Paul and Abdel Nader from the Thunder to Phoenix for Ricky Rubio, Kelly Oubre, Ty Jerome, Jalen Lecque or whatever. He's French.
Let
him pronounce his own his own name. And then draft compensation. And what that draft compensation ended up being was a protected Phoenix pick in 2022 that's lottery protected, and then it goes into 13 to 30. It's a lot of protections on that. That's not super important because it's not for a couple of years. But the big thing was Phoenix didn't give up their number 10 pick in the draft, as we go back to the mock, and which is going to be a solid player, especially now that they're going to be most likely a playoff team or hunting for the playoffs. Another player to fill that gap from those role players that they kind of dumped out with to OKC. So what are your? I know we've talked about this in group chats and everything, but do you think? What do you think about this deal? Is this a deal that each side won? Was there a winner and a loser? Like, what's your kind of grade on it?
To be fair, the winner obviously OKC at this point, because it just replenishes that stockpile of picks. I know that if you go down, we mentioned OKC now has 16 picks in the first round in the next 6 years, I think, which is absolutely wild to me. I don't know if that's. If you would have asked me 2 years ago, I never would have thought this was possible. I know that it's a lot to get your own picks and stuff like that, but if you're thinking, if you're asking me for a clear winner, I think obviously OKC, because I think that they can build and package something else for an additional player that's high caliber. Don't forget to mention the LA Lakers trade with Dennis Schroeder, right?
Oh, yeah.
Being pushed to LA for probably an additional pick as well.
That
right?
was actually, they traded the Lakers traded their first round pick, number 28, that you see right here, for that. Yeah, you're exactly right about that.
So I do want to push this, but at the end of the day, I think from a Phoenix Suns standpoint, it gets Devin Booker re-energized. I know for a while, and don't get me wrong, Booker's been balling for a while. Like he's amazing. He's a once in a lifetime player, just pure shooter. I think the losing over and over would kind of derail his mentality, his mindset. So I think having a player like Chris Paul that can come in and be that mentor to him and kind of guide him a little bit, I think is a win from a Suns perspective, right? Getting Devin Booker like a little bit more re-energized and at least giving them more hope that they can make the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point because there was rumors of Devin Booker's unhappiness, and as you can see, I'm putting in that Dennis Schroeder trade there. There was rumors of his unhappiness. There was rumors that he wanted to go play with Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell in Minnesota. I think this kind of that it kind of removes that from the table now. And I think while I think OKC won, I don't want to look at this. There's two different situations here. I saw some people that even Phoenix Suns fans that I follow that were a little bit the money the Chris Paul's owed got them a little worried. Plus trading away some assets. I think the fact that they kept the number 10 pick, everybody's going to be okay with the trade.
That's huge.
But I think it's really important because you're going to get a solid 2 years from Chris Paul. Maybe he takes a little bit of a step back, which he didn't last year. Made All-NBA. But I think it just makes you a more legitimate team, a more legitimate culture. You've got Monty Williams there, which already kind of turned them around from where they were in the past. Robert Sarver, the owner there, still catches a lot of crap for how he's handled things, but hopefully he's kind of sitting back and letting people run the organization and bringing in a player like Chris Paul, like you're going to kind of stabilize stuff. Maybe even maybe you end up, this is the place where Chris Paul ends up ending his career and you sign him for another year or so after the deal ends.
I think so.
I think it's just a good culture to start creating. And you really didn't give up anything. Ricky Rubio was a guy who came in last year, who helped them. He's a good player. Kelly Oubre was he's an expiring that was kind of a wild card dart throw, decent player. And then two guys that really didn't play much this year. And then a future pick, which you can get back, right? Like they've gotten picks in the past. Now they even have an asset in Chris Paul where, maybe they end up trading him in a year or a year or two, who knows, but.
Yeah, no, I think stability in the locker room is the biggest thing here. Because if you think about it, they've always been super young. The Phoenix Suns have always been super young. And if I'm thinking about it correctly, like Devin Booker probably doesn't know what it's like to have like a true like professional locker room. And I think Chris Paul can potentially bring that to them.
No, I mean, I think it's important. I think you saw this even with the Thunder is that Chris Paul came in. Obviously, he's a leader. He's going to be a leader wherever he is. But he didn't come in and like start bossing people around like a lot of people made jokes.
I was just about to say
because Chris Paul is the smaller guy that just like runs around and like waves his hands and gets upset at people. He didn't come in and like upset anything or upset the balance of things. Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander came in, he also let him take charge on some things. Steven Adams was there as a personality. Dennis Schroeder was there. They empowered each other. I think the same is going to happen in Phoenix because they've got a core of guys there. They didn't really give up anybody that was key in their playoff run besides Rubio, and you replaced him with a better player. So, I'm excited to see Phoenix. It comes at the expense of, a team like the Grizzlies. But at the same time, I think it's good to see better teams, and I think it's good to see – it's going to be fun to see Chris Paul in those jerseys running around with Devin Booker.
I know.
So it's good. That's going to be fun. I mean, and the Thunder gave up Dennis Schroeder as well, got another pick in the first round. I think the Thunder could end up trying to move up in the draft. Eventually, there's no way that they're going to make all of these picks.
No.
There's no scenario. They're going to package a lot of these for a star or a player down the line when they have kind of the base of the guts of their roster established. So there's going to be some fun things as an OKC fan to look for down the pipe. I think from the, just to touch on the Lakers slightly, I think Schroeder played really well last year. And I think if they let him come off the bench, if they let him play the Rondo role, basically, like he's better than Rajon Rondo, doesn't have the experience, but I think he's a more consistent player and a better scorer than Rondo, and I think he'll be fine. I think he's kind of the criticism for him and earlier in his career at Atlanta, maybe he didn't know the type of player that he was. I think he kind of realized last year he should have won. Did he win Sixth Man of the Year?
I don't think so.
Or did Montrezl Harrell did? I thought he should have won.
Yeah, Montrezl Harrell did. Yeah,
I thought he should have. I thought Schroeder should have won.
Agreed. Yeah, but yeah, I think all in all, I think the Lakers stole Schroeder from OKC. I mean, don't get me wrong, they got another pick, but I think the Lakers,
There's probably a lot of teams out there that are like, damn it, we didn't know he was available.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like, and I've heard this comparison. It's not my original idea, but it's like the fantasy trade that happens on like a Thursday in your fantasy football league where you're like, dude, I didn't know Jonathan Taylor was available. I didn't know that Devontae Adams was available, and you just got him for nothing.
What do you mean Dalvin Cook was available?
Exactly. We've seen it in our own leagues, but it's about being in the right place, right time. The Thunder had motivation to get it done. The Lakers had motivation to get it done. They didn't want to make that draft pick. LeBron James is notorious for not bringing in rookies. So it makes total sense. They'll probably fill out with some more veterans since they won a title. They know that they can do it. They're set up to defend that title. I think you're probably going to see even more. There wasn't a high level of veterans that went over there last year. You had the Rondos, you had the Danny Greens.
Danny Green, yeah.
They actually, I didn't have that trade in there either. They traded Danny Green he was part of the Dennis Schroeder trade.
He was
right?
part of the Schroeder trade.
Right. So I guess I pulled the tweet before they confirmed the other player, but they've brought in guys like that. I think you're going to get, that's a place that you could see a guy like Marc Gasol, or you could see a guy like Serge Ibaka go take a discount to go to. So there's going to be some options for them, but obviously the rich get richer.
Rich get richer.
But another one that's a bomb. There's a couple of other trades that we can touch on, but that we want to really touch on is that James Harden. So the Rockets are a dumpster fire. Just Mike D'Antoni's gone. Daryl Morey's gone. Daryl Morey's in Philly. Mike D'Antoni's an assistant coach in Brooklyn. That guy's taken a year off to have fun with Steve Nash and is just going to wait and get another gig next year or the next 2 years. He's going to get a head coaching gig. So he's having fun. And so basically now James Harden has expressed, there was a report yesterday from ESPN as well about Brooklyn being a legitimate destination with James Harden, with former Harden teammate Kevin Durant and then Kyrie Irving being there as well. Now James Harden has basically done the old trade request and said that he wants to be on a contender elsewhere. Doesn't view the Rockets as a contender anymore, even though they mortgaged the future for Russell Westbrook to make him happy. He wants to go to Brooklyn or Philadelphia. And it's important to note that those teams, just like we said, Philadelphia is now run by Daryl Morey, who was running in Houston, who gave Harden everything that he wanted and was basically, the Harden believer, made the trade for Harden. And then Brooklyn has Mike D'Antoni, who is an assistant on Steve Nash's staff. I'm sure he will have a loud voice in the room. Nash has also had his best years in the D'Antoni system in Phoenix, won 2 MVPs. So, that's obvious to two obvious destinations, two obvious title contenders as they stand now before adding James Harden. So, I think it's going to be are we going to end up with Russell Westbrook on the Rockets by himself?
Honestly, let's touch on the James Harden thing first. This is wild beyond belief because I think it was a domino effect, right? I think wanted out first, and then James Harden was like, "No, if anybody's leaving, it's fucking gonna be me."
It's gonna be me.
At the end of the day, I'm I've been here, I've done that. You've had your fun. It's my turn, right? So, I think if you're picking between those two teams, the logical place for how he plays is Philly, because at the end of the day, you take the ball out of Ben Simmons' hands. And you actually have someone who could potentially run the offense, right? Because let's face it, Ben Simmons, he's awesome, but he can't run an offense. I think if you take him and you put him with Embiid and you put him with Ben Simmons, who could run the floor and is always going to push everything, I think that would be a natural fit for him to be in. I think the wish list of the Brooklyn Nets trade, it's a little bit far-fetched, meaning like Kyrie Irving, ball hog. Kevin Durant, ball hog, loves to score. James Harden, also ball hog, loves to score. Like at the end of the day, it just doesn't. I think having those two on the team, it works out with, they're going to get their touches. I can't, if I'm Harden, I can't see myself going to Brooklyn unless it's strictly to win a ring. Like if you want everything to flow through you, if you don't want to be the main guy, like of course, like go there, because let's face it, Kevin Durant's going to be the guy. But at the end of the day, I think obviously if you're picking it, it's the more logical choice is Philly. But dude, I don't think it's gonna happen. They could they could honestly say, hey, you know what? Screw you guys. You're playing together. It is.
Yeah. I mean, and you kind of described a scenario there where Harden comes into Philly. I think it's hard from everything that I've heard. A lot of people have talked about it. It's obviously nothing confirmed yet, but I think logically the Harden trade to Philly, which I do think is the most likely scenario as well. Ben Simmons is probably included in that trade.
No, that's what I mean. You make a good point.
Yeah.
It's one of them.
I guess you could.
If I'm the Rockets,
you'd want to keep everybody. But there's no way that they're going to take Horford to match the salary.
Tobias,
because yeah, I mean that's a good point. They could take Tobias too, I'm sure, and we could get in the trade machine and work out a bunch of them. But I do think, because this is the thing, this is the way I see it. With Brooklyn, you're going to have a Paul George trade with Brooklyn. That's what's going to happen is Paul George to LA. Because with Paul George in LA, you got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you got Gallinari, another solid role player, and you got a bunch of picks. There's some other crap in there, but those are the notable things. With Brooklyn, you're selling Houston on Karis LeVert, probably Taurean Prince, who's, he's a throw-in. He's like Danilo Gallinari. And then maybe a couple of other salaries, plus whoever young on their roster that you want, plus picks. And that's the Rockets recouping picks that they gave up in that Paul George trade. That's the one, depending on, some GMs would prefer that because you get the picks, you get the kind of the longevity there. But now if you're Philadelphia and Daryl Morey is like, look, I want James Harden. I want James Harden to have the ball. He fits theoretically pretty well with Joel Embiid and the other pieces we have.
Yeah.
With a shooter like Tobias Harris, another guy who can, once you space the floor, is going to be more deadly than he was in the past few years. Let's get Ben Simmons out of here and get some value for him, because that way, if you're Philly, you don't have to give up as many picks as Brooklyn's going to have to give up.
That's 100% true
for Harden. So you're probably still going to give up a pick, because if Houston's smart, they're going to hold on to that. They're going to be like, look, we're not giving you, we're getting multiple firsts, but you probably can get by with like 2 protected firsts there. But I'd like to see him in Philly. I think that's the most fun to me, because
it'd be fun.
The personalities of him, Kyrie, and Kevin Durant, to me, lean more toward like
Brooklyn.
they're going to be
Brooklyn,
yeah. Those 3 personalities, like, it's going to be fun for the most part, but there's going to be some stuff that happens there that's going to be like, why are we talking about this for the 18th straight day?
Dude, I did not see Harden and Kyrie getting along. It would I feel like that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Dude, there's just so much unpredictable drama that could happen there. Whereas in Philadelphia, you got the guy manning the ship, and Daryl Morey is like, he's a pro at putting together what he wants it to look like and making it work. The ownership changed the past couple of years, kind of screwed up what he had in Houston. And for some reason, I'm forgetting who they hired as head coach. Oh, Doc Rivers. Yeah. So Doc Rivers is a Stars head coach. So he's going to come in and people are going to love him, and they'll probably win some games. I don't know if they're going to win a title. I probably wouldn't pick either of these teams to win a title, but I think that's where I want him to go, is Philly. I want him to go to Philly, and I want him to play with Joel Embiid and see what Joel Embiid can do with a dominant ball handler, playing in the pick and roll and defending.
That's what I was going to say. Playing in the pick and roll is going to be huge for him, because James Harden is such a 3-point threat that he's going to have whatever he wants.
James Harden got Clint Capella paid. Like, Joel Embiid is an all-star, all-NBA center.
By himself.
Like, so like Harden, I think some things are going to change from Philly. They're not going to play the whole 5 no center lineup thing. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think we saw that didn't work. Yeah, we saw that didn't work. I loved it though. I was a fan of trying it. God. But yeah, so I think Philly's the most fun destination there. Hopefully we see that. I think the other piece of this is, because we saw we heard from Russ first. He's the one that spoke up about.
I don't think Russ gets traded.
I don't think he does. I think Russ. There's a better chance Russ gets traded, like farther down the line in the season, like at the trade deadline, maybe. But that's to me kind of where that goes in. Like, I think there's a chance he could get traded, but it's going to be more of like, oh, he rebuilt a little bit of his value. He averages a triple-double, some shit like that.
I don't think that Houston can trade Russ. I think that, don't get me wrong, like James Harden is a lot better of a draw for sure, 100%. Like, no question. I just don't think that if I'm a team, unless like I really want somebody that can build me a house from three and could run the floor, like at the end of the day, cool. But like his salary is just too big. He's not a Chris Paul.
It is. There's some stuff out there that can get it done, but you have to find the right situation, whether it's like a Charlotte or a Detroit or somebody that has the contracts, is willing to take a chance to get a star. Yeah. But just and like then also too, if you make the trade with Philly and you get Ben Simmons included, please no. If you make the trade with Philly and get Ben Simmons, I think that speeds up you getting rid of Russ. If you don't, then maybe you hold on to him and try to win some games and like save, put some fans in the stands when that's available. But you don't want him and Russ out there playing together. That would make for some good fast break offense. But God, that would be a
no shooting
at all. Please get PJ Tucker out of there. Maybe you can tag him with Harden in a trade. That's probably, I think that could end up happening too.
Potentially, just to have PJ Tucker waived.
Yeah, anyway. But there's a lot of stuff happening. I don't think anything's broke while we were on the phone, but I think you're going to see. I think this may be all that we see before the draft, but I think the draft is going to bring a lot more transactions, a lot more trades with picks. We could see some players traded within that time because you want the rights to make the pick. I think there's a lot of stuff that I'm looking forward to. The Warriors are going to be fun again. I made that note here. They're going to be right back on top. I think there's some stuff I want to get into on like season previews eventually on the next podcast, where I think there's some interesting stuff there with how the West and East are going to shake out. But
everybody forgot about the Warriors, man. Don't forget that they have 2 All-Stars and 2 of the best 3-point shooters ever coming back. Don't forget.
You can't forget. We will soon be reminded of that fact. Nobody out here is going to be able to go see them. I drove by the stadium the other day. It's looking nice.
I forgot. California is in a full-out lockdown, right?
Yeah, like we said, boarding up the windows.
Boarded up.
No, I mean we're there. I think evidently the owner of the Warriors has some elaborate plan to get fans back. I think most likely we don't see them. There was a notification. I think Shams tweeted a few minutes ago about some story about there's some teams that are trying to get fans. I think we're going to see kind of what the NFL did, where you start out with 0 and then you eventually trickle in like 25 to 30% or whatever.
No, the Grizzlies are selling season tickets.
Right. Yeah, you're going to see. Yeah, there's going to be some places are going to have them. But
that's obviously
Tennessee. I think you could see it increase. Yeah.
That's Tennessee, not California.
Right. California, the Lakers announced they're not having fans unless something crazy changes. I think the Warriors will probably follow suit.
No, for sure.
But
I think as you see this vaccine rolled out, it's always going to be like pretty fluid, and I think once we get to the playoffs potentially, like happening in June, July, we might see like full fans in the playoffs. That would be
fun.
That would be nuts.
That would be nuts. That would be fun to have like the playoffs fully, like everything's good by the playoffs, no bubble, home and we're good to go. That'd be a great scenario. But we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. We'll get into some post-draft stuff maybe the end of this week, over the weekend. We'll see what the schedule allows. But appreciate everybody jumping in and joining, whoever watches and listens. If you like the format, let us know. You can you can find everything that you need to know in the description of whatever you're listening or watching on. So we'll talk to you next time. But I appreciate Blake as always, and we'll get out of here.
See ya. All Peace. Good. See you, man.